Tales of the Mushroom People 2, Call of Cthulhushroom. Those who have heard the first tale of the Mushroom People have asked, how is it that among all Mushroom People, Doomshroom cannot speak, capable of muttering only Doom in a low and somber voice? This story relates the inimical events that transpired in our quiet forest, which were directly responsible for his loss of voice. I will tell you this story, though I am only a ghost and have little to do with the forest myself, except when the wind picks up and carries me through the trees on overcast, moonless autumn nights, where I haunt, in truth, only the dry leaves on the forest floor. It all began when members of the cephalopod cult discovered an ancient text better left undisturbed. They pantomimed the grotesque rituals and recited the ancient words. Flunglui muglunaf Cthulhu raile oglan oglan futn. They belatedly recognized their error in summoning Cthulhushroom from beyond time and space, only as they were eaten. Cthulhushroom claimed a portion of the forest through which ran a ravine, holding several long-forgotten marble quarries. Amongst this architecture of leaf and stone, Cthulhushroom lurked and began its evil craft. Cthulhushroom discovered the labyrinthine network of caverns that span the forest beneath its roots. Using these byways, Cthulhushroom's influence began to taint the entirety of the forest. Obscene alien forms of life appeared in the forest, their wills subjugated to that of Cthulhushroom. Cthulhushroom scattered its seed in the damp margins of remote creeks. What legion of horrors would spawn in due time were too ghastly to imagine. At night, Cthulhushroom would rise on leathery wings, and their harsh beating of the air sounded out a countdown to the inevitable reopening of trans-dimensional portals untouched since the dawn of man. Through these gateways, Cthulhushroom would usher in the great old ones, before whom the forest and all of its denizens would wither. Someone had to save the forest. It couldn't be me, though, since I am both timid and utterly insubstantial. I resolved to find someone in the forest who could help. There's a robot called 17 that's been set loose in the forest after her memory was deleted. An experiment ostensibly in the existential angst of artificial intelligences. I found her wandering on the abandoned rail line and asked her for advice. Though deprived of her memory, 17 retained her logic circuits and announced, "If the creature now plaguing the forest hails from the depths of space, perhaps so too should an adversary worthy of evicting it from these lands." She activated her interstellar distress beacon in hopes of attracting just such a hero. The signal was received by a spacefaring mercenary, cyborg bounty hunter. He was interested in measuring his skills against the vaunted reputation of Cthulhushroom. Cyborg bounty hunter and his sidekick landed their craft in the mudflats of the nearby river. The ever-watchful eyes in the forest along the banks reported their arrival to Cthulhushroom. A palpable, nerve-wracking silence settled over the mudflats as the combatants took the field. No birds chirped, no frogs croaked. The battle was fierce but brief. Cyborg bounty hunter and sidekick were lucky to escape with their lives. With their hopes for a quick rescue crushed, the inhabitants of the forest despaired. Attempting to remain beneath notice, the praying mantis hid in the shadows of the bamboo grove. The walrus felt uncomfortable in the quarry lake and waddled off to parts unknown to find a home beyond the dread shadow of Cthulhushroom. Well, what was I supposed to do? I felt like hiding in the forest too. I hid so well for a time that I could not even find myself. But still, I heard the whispers of Cthulhushroom's dark endeavors deep beneath the forest floor. I had to find someone to help. I thought of the scientist at the university in town who sometimes hiked in the forest. When I described my problem, he confessed that such matters were outside his expertise. But, he said, whenever I have a problem, I look for the answer at the library. After much research, the scientist announced, according to H.P. Lovecraft, something of an authority on all things Cthulhu, we would do well to avail ourselves of the ancient enmity between a certain Shoggoth and Cthulhushroom. Despite my misgivings, I headed deep into subterranean realms in search of Shoggoth, which, it turns out, is a mindless beast, who upon discovering my intrusion, pursued me wildly to the surface where I led it directly to the source of our affliction. Shoggoth, an indescribable mass of terror, threw itself upon its mortal enemy. The horror of the melee was more than I could bear to witness. I fled before the outcome of the battle was determined. However, the next day there could be no doubt regarding the victor. The dragonflies hovered uncertainly, while an unnatural green blossomed in the waters beneath them. Sensing the evil about to be unleashed, butterflies left the forest in droves. I was running out of options. Finally, my thoughts turned to the sorceress Eugenia, who lived in a castle on the margin between the forest and the town. Eugenia was already well aware of the presence of Cthulhushroom. She had given it considerable thought. You have to fight the power of mushroom with mushroom. You don't mean, I said, taken aback. That's exactly who I do mean, Eugenia said. Of course, Poison Pie, man of the mushroom people. I found Poison Pie tending his garden deep in the forest. I explained the problem and how desperate I was, since all my previous efforts had come to naught. He said he'd look into it in a tone that was entirely too nonchalant for my liking. Moving as silently as a mushroom, Poison Pie stole into the lands under Cthulhushroom's sway and spied upon the alien invader. He quickly decided this foe was too much for a single man of the mushroom people to tackle alone. Poison Pie mustered the mushroom people. He rallied them with the rousing call to arms for the sake of the forest they all called home. They snuck up on Cthulhushroom en masse, readying their ambush. The mushroom people surrounded Cthulhushroom deep in the quarry, but the beast showed not the slightest hint of trepidation. In ages hence, historians of the mushroom people will recall with pride the heroics displayed on that fateful day, yet none of their attacks had much of an effect on Cthulhushroom. Cthulhushroom laughed at their meager attacks. At that moment, the mushroom people sprung their trap. Robo-Shroom opened a trans-dimensional portal to the Eldritch universe. Doom-Shroom shoved Cthulhushroom toward the window. Cthulhushroom stumbled and was caught in the pull of the vortex, but just as victory seemed assured, a tentacle whipped out and ensnared Doom-Shroom, dragging him into the vortex after Cthulhushroom. The vortex abruptly snapped closed, disappearing completely with not so much as a pop. The remaining mushrooms stood around in a stunned silence. Suddenly, the portal reopened and unexpectedly spit Doomshroom out from dimensions beyond time and space and back into the earthly reality of the forest. Just as quickly, the portal closed again. With the departure of Cthulhushroom, the mushroom people scattered back to their fungal domains, and the forest gradually returned back to its normal, peaceful state. As for Doomshroom, he had peered into things that should not be known by mortal man, mushroom or otherwise, and thereafter never muttered more than a single word. Doom. The end. All finger puppets designed and created by Joseph, Ruth, Lynn, and David Keffer from 2010 to 2012 in Seoul, Korea, and Knoxville, Tennessee. All text by David Keffer during the winter of 2012 in Knoxville, Tennessee. All terrestrial photographs taken by David Keffer in East Tennessee. Space photograph by the Hubble Space Telescope. This has been a production of the Poison Pie Publishing House. Visit us online at www.poisonpie.com.